So, could take a closer look at my Moxon vise here. So when I built it, I started off basically by making the lamination for the base. It's 5/4 inch material, so this is about 3.5 inches total. I didn't feel I needed the full thickness all the way across. I just wanted a little bit of thickness on this end to give a little bit more distance between the nuts, so that as the threaded rod is riding on those nuts, it has a little bit more registration there. So anyway, so started by laminating that together. Also the chop, I laminated 2 boards together, and also laminated on a piece of leather. Once I had those laminated, I cut out these notches on either end, and these are just about 1/4 inch shy of this width here, and that's to give a little bit of extra space between these two guide rails here to go on either side of up here without binding. Right, a little bit of play is good. If it's binding, it's going to make it. I figured it would make it a little bit harder to run. So once I got these guys laminated, I drilled these holes in the chop in the drill press. I cut these bevels. I guess that's optional, but it's handy for when you're doing like half-blind dovetails and stuff. You can get your saw on a bit more of an angle than if you'd left it square. Once I had that part done and drilled, I went on to putting on these guide blocks on the side. Now, not too much to say here. You just want it to leave enough space on top to so you've got room for your guide block here, and you want to make it square with the surface. Both of them square. That makes sure they're parallel and that it won't twist or bind or do anything funny as it's sliding in. So after that, I didn't have my guide blocks on at the time, so I put it together, got it fairly evenly spaced, and then I clamped it here. Once it was clamped, then I put on my guide blocks. So I took these little pieces of ultra high molecular weight plastic, but and that's worked fine. But actually, I think just some maple here would be fine. Any sort of hardwood, and probably would even work a little bit better if you had something thicker. So I would put probably use some hardwood like maple here if I was to do it again. But put them on here. You don't want it super tight. You want like just a little bit of play. Probably have about one or two sheets of paper worth. Actually, I think I used a sheet of paper for a spacer when I was putting these together. So you put those on. Mark them while it's all clamped in place on both sides. Then, as long as these guys are of a uniform thickness and are parallel, it'll work. It'll slide not too badly. See, mine's kind of binding a little bit now, but doesn't really affect its performance at all. So after that, you've got a couple of options. For me, I have a nice 3/4 inch brad point bit, so it registers in this hole pretty well. So I actually used my drill to as a guide to go through these holes to make sure I had them lined up. So I actually used that to start drilling my hole in through here on both sides. You could also, mark it, mark the center of the hole through here, to know exactly where you want that hole to go through, and then take it over to your drill press, or however you want to do that. So now we've got our this guy's pretty well done. Holes are drilled in there. We've got our holes in here now. Guide blocks on. The next step is to get these pockets for the nuts. There's a pocket on both sides. Don't have to be too fussy with them. The idea is that they're I've got maybe about a millimeter worth of play in there. That they're it's not too sloppy in here, so that the rails will come out nice and parallel. So for me, I used a router to, well, first I marked it out. I got the found out around where center was, marked it out, roughed it out with a router, so I had a fairly uniform depth there. Then I squared it up and trimmed it up with a chisel. So just have it so it doesn't move around too much in there. It's the same thing for both sides and front and back. You probably want to make sure that the bottom of both of the nuts on either side here are the same distance from the bottom. And that's pretty well it for the base. The handles are, I think this is about a 10-inch piece, but you however long you want it. I just have still using this little square piece of wood. It's been working just fine for me. Drill your 5/8 inch hole in here, so it can be a snug fit in there. Then you just use the two. I just use two nuts on here. Tighten it down. I did counter bore in here a little bit so that the nuts weren't taking up too much space. I figure you could also, if you can find one long enough, you could use a carriage bolt, anything like that. Just tighten it up on the other side. But again, it's nothing too special there. So we put our nuts in. Get our chop on there. Also used put a washer on. And there's really not much to it. We just start threading it in. Of course, it doesn't really get smooth until it gets into the other nut. Now the idea is that we that threaded rod has now come up to this nut, and we don't want to make it tight. We just want to start make sure that the threaded rod starts engaging this other nut once it gets through. That means that once it starts threading, it's not going to turn, so that's going to fix the distance between those two nuts. So now this guy is going to go in and out a little bit, and not be tight, but it's really not going to go anywhere. So now it's all set. And yeah, we do that on the other side. We are all good to go. And yeah, there it is. Hope that's. If you have any questions about dimensions or something I didn't quite cover, or that I didn't quite get in the video, because I'm still pretty new at the video thing, let me know, and I'll try to fill it in the comments. All right, have a good one.